Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So, as you can tell, today we're actually going classic. That's right, classic Harley Quinn. I absolutely love this costume, and I wanted to show you guys my method of making a no stand-up collar and a stand-up collar, which are two different versions of the collars for this costume. So, jumping right in, I'm showing you the supplies that I'm using here. The fabric that I'm going to be using is a two-way stretch cotton spandex blend fabric, which I want to say is roughly about 30 to 40% stretch. And then, most important, the stretch interfacing, which all of these supplies you can find locally to you. This is going to be kind of a lengthy video, so I'm going to put some time markers in the description box below so you can jump around when you need to. So you're going to need a pattern. This is my custom self-created pattern, and sorry, no, I don't sell it, but they're very easy to make, and you can see I've got a front and a back to the pattern. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my outside fabric and I'm going to cut out 2 of the front and 2 of the back. But in order to achieve this, I don't want to use all 6 yards of the fabric that I bought, so I'm going to cut a little block off. And basically, I'm going to prep my fabric, and the first thing that I do when I prep my fabric is I remove my selvage. The reason for removing the selvage is because you'll notice that sometimes when you hold the side of your fabric up, it's kind of ripply, and it might cause your pattern to sit funny after it's cut away. So I just like to go in and cut it off just from the get-go before I lay any of my pattern pieces out. So basically, these are the paperweights that I use for my patterns. It is a very simple thing. It's a washer that you can get from your local hardware store. And they're just metal washers. They're very inexpensive. And I just buy a whole bundle of them for my pattern making. Typically, with my patterns, I like to use like either tag board, or this is actually poster board. It's really inexpensive and it makes my patterns last a long time. So I did use this first rotary cutter. I didn't like the way that it worked out, so I went and got my Fiskars out and a pair of scissors for the inside cuts, and I'm going to show you that. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut around the whole outside of the pattern, and I'm going to stop right about here, and then I'm going to restart right about here, leaving that inside cut to do with my scissors. And what I'll do is I will draw very lightly with a pencil over the top of that inside cut, just because when you have this many layers, it's kind of hard to get it proper with a rotary cutter. And I'm working with about 4 layers here, so we'll just go ahead and cut it out with my scissors. And that way it also preserves my pattern. You don't want to cut into your pattern because then it shrinks and then it doesn't fit right, and then you have to remake it. So we'll repeat this for the front side of the pattern, and then we're going to jump into interfacing. Make sure that the stretch is going across ways from your pattern. And what I mean is that the stretch goes around the neck as opposed to up and down. And you'll see here I'm just kind of going through with my rotary cutter, and I can do it in one quick swoop because I'm only doing very lightweight pattern. I typically will only interface one side of my collar, just because I think that 2 sides, it kind of makes the pattern a little bit too bulky. But what I'll do is I'll go to my iron, I'll go ahead and iron on my interfacing, and just kind of double checking the stretch. Big tip with ironing over stretch interfacing, I generally like to lift and pat my iron down onto the project as opposed to rub, just because the interfacing tends to stick sometimes. Okay, and jumping over to the sewing machine, The first thing I like to do when I'm working with white fabric is I like to remove any dust particles from my sewing machine. And lose my little hose, but we'll get that later. And this is just regular canned air, and I just like to make sure that I remove any dust particles so that way it doesn't get caught up in my stitching and it doesn't look like crap. Anyway, so we're going to go ahead and use a stretch needle. I typically like to use a 14 because you saw there it does get a little bit thick with the collar, and with the 12 I think the needle just can't handle the type of work I'm going to put it through. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this side of the fabric that does not have the interfacing. I'm going to find the right side of the fabric. And sometimes it's hard to tell, but you can look at the edges and see which way the fabric curls, or if you understand grains. Anyway, I'm going to mark the outside of the fabric, and then I'm going to grab the interface side, and I'm going to go ahead and take my collar edges, and I'm going to pin this side together. This is not the side that I'm going to be sewing, but I want to, honestly, I don't know what my method was right here. I'm actually going to sew the other side that I didn't pin. Oh, I think I was wanting to show you guys how it would look after I sewed one side without, anyway. Okay, so jumping right in. So we'll go ahead and we'll give it a quick stitch, a back tack. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to top stitch that whole flap to one side. I typically like to tack it to the front side for the outside of the collar. And you're going to want to do the same thing to the other side of your collar that you pinned over, that's over on the side. Does that make sense? So I'm going to kind of true up my edge right here as well. Get rid of any crazy threads. So then I'm going to take both sides of my collar after I've sewn that one shoulder side together. And what you're going to see is I'm going to kind of sandwich them together. And if you did it right, where you did one side to the front and one side to the back, you'll see that when they lay together, they kind of nestle together perfectly. And you'll see right here, kind of stick them together, and they just kind of nest together very easily. And that reduces the bulk that you have to sew through, and that's why I do that. So after we've pinned all the way around the whole collar, and we're doing the no stand-up collar, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to sew inner facing side up. You don't have to do that. The reason I prefer to do it is because I've noticed that the fabric gets kind of shifty if I don't. And to avoid any shift, we're just going to sew that way. Now I make sure that I'm using probably about 1/4 of an inch, which is this edge of my walking foot is going to be on the edge of the fabric. And not the interfacing, because you can see the interfacing kind of sticks out a little bit. And we'll just go through and sew all the way around the collar. And lifting the foot when I need to readjust. And this is kind of my go-to foot with pretty much every project, so. I'm actually going to speed up through a lot of this video because the process to make one of these takes roughly about, I would say about 4 to 5 hours from start to finish. But I did want to show you guys, just in case, for reference, if you guys kind of get stuck or if you need some tips or an idea, that you can kind of refer back to this video. So we're coming up on the home stretch. And you can see that I've stitched all the way around the squiggly part of the collar. And now, with this version, we're actually going to stitch around the top part of the collar as well. So we'll go ahead and give that a good sewing. So the next thing I like to do, this is completely optional, but my personal preference is to use a pair of good pinking shears. The reason that I use pinking shears on corners with most of my costumes is because you can get a little bit more precise of a cut. You can get closer to the edge. It's more uniform. So when you're turning a project right side out and you're top stitching, that there's more, like there's not as much crazy bulk. And if you can see through the fabric like you can with the white, you won't be able to see a whole bunch of notching. When I first started sewing, I would actually go through with a little pair of scissors and I would notch the crap out of the, the edges that are curved. And I found that you could see that notching through some fabrics. So for me personally, I just like to use a pair of pinking shears. It's a lot quicker. It looks a lot more nice, more uniform, and it lays flat. And I'll still go through and I'll notch out some areas that the pinking shears don't quite get. So now that I have my collar completely cut out and pinked around the edges, I am going to get my trusty hemostats. If you guys followed me for a while, you've seen I've used these in other videos. These are just incredibly helpful tools. This one's a regular hemostat. I think this one's a 12-inch. And it looks like a pair of scissors, but they're like, I don't know, like a pair of extra hands, what you can call them. This one's an alligator hemostat. This is probably my most used just because you can see that they look like scissors, but they have like the little mouth at the end. And you can reach through and pull tubes and like with this collar, you can reach all the way through and pull it all the way out. And like, have you ever had a pair of like pajama bottoms that had like the little drawstring around the waist, and like you go wash them and then that drawstring falls halfway out? Yeah, those. Hate it when that happens. These are the best for pulling that little drawstring back through. So, helpful tip. So we'll go ahead and you'll see how quick it is. We'll just pull that through, and then you want to be careful when you're kind of pulling the rest of the collar and all those little petals through. You kind of go slow and steady. And then when I get to the end, you can either use this one. You kind of reach in and poke out your little petal things. And you can see I'm kind of using the edge of the hemostat to kind of push out the corner, which will help it with the pressing process that we're getting ready to do here in a second as well. What I'll do is I'll usually get the bigger hemostat and I'll pull the petals out from the right side of the project. And then I'll take the hemostat and push it into the inside and kind of rub it around the corners to kind of push all those edges out. And when we're done doing that, you have a goofy looking collar. And we're going to head off to the ironing board. Now when you're ironing over this many layers, I like to use a clapper. And that's a piece of wood. It is a sewing tool. The coolest thing I've ever seen, when you iron something, it actually will make it more flat. As you can see right here, it takes more bulk out of the seam. I don't know, there's something between the wood and the heat and the wood cooling it down quicker, or I'm not sure, but it makes the seam so much flatter. If you've never used a clapper, definitely try it. So now we're going to top stitch, and I'm going to start from right about here, and we are going to leave probably about an inch in the front of that collar, not top stitch, because we still need to put Velcro on this and turn our edges. And I'm going to stop in the same spot and then restart and sew all the way around the collar again. Now I'm top stitching, I think, about 1/4 of an inch in. which should just catch where I pinked. Coming around to the home stretch. Again, we're stopping about an inch away from the edge. And we're over halfway done now, guys. So now we're going to talk about Velcro. There's so many different ways that you can do closures on your collar, but I choose Velcro, and there's several different kinds. I'm going to show you a few. This is just your regular sew-on Velcro, nothing special. This is what they call a self-sticking Velcro, and I did find this at Joann's. It's relatively inexpensive, and I actually like this for more of my costume work because I think that it, the hook and eyes, there's something about it where they attach a little bit better to me personally. And this one is actually a little bit thick. There's also another Velcro called, it's a self-stick Velcro as well, but it's called Baby Velcro. And this one I actually find online through a local, I'm sorry, not local. I don't think she's local. Anyway, I find it online, and this is a self-sticking Velcro called Baby Velcro that I use for lighter weight projects, and it's the same as the other self-stick that I get locally. It's just thinner and more lightweight. So I'm going to use the thicker stuff. And the way that I do my Velcro on my collars, again, this is also personal preference, but I like to basically take my collar and put the front over the back. That way when you're wearing the collar, you're not seeing the little stacked up side of the Velcro. It looks like the other side where it's clean. So first things first is I'm going to go ahead and true up my edge if I have any interfacing kind of hanging out of the side of there. And over years of doing sewing, I've just found this works best for me. What I'll do is I'll actually pinch down probably about 1/4 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch, depending on, you know, what kind of project you're doing. And I'll pinch down and put 4 needles in, 2 in the front, 2 in the back. Here's a better look at what I've done. Now what I'll do is I'll pull this seam out from the top, and I'm just going to snip off just a tip, just a triangle. I'll do the same thing on the other side. And what I found is this reduces the bulk that you have to sew over the top and that you have to stuff back down in to hem the edge of your collar. But it gives it a really clean, finished, professional look when you're done. And you'll see I just kind of pinch it in between my fingers and reposition all of my pins, so that way I can get ready for the Velcro. Okay, so now that we have the front and the back prepped, we're going to take the Velcro and we're going to cut 2 strips for the front and the back. Now with this Velcro, you have the rough side, which has got the hooks, and the soft side, which has got the fuzzy stuff. And I'm just going to lay this against my project, and we're just going to scientifically cut off a chunk. Now, I like to have the hooks facing up on against the body, because you don't want that scratchiness touching your body. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to shape my Velcro the way that my collar is overlapping, so I don't have Velcro sticking out where it shouldn't be. This is all just completely personal preference, but I found that it looks and lays nicer when you have the Velcro kind of shaped to your project. So we'll go ahead and shape that bad boy. And then we'll go to the sewing machine and secure that piece of Velcro. Oh, it looks like I'm going through and reshaping the other one first. Getting ahead of myself. Okay, so now we'll go to the sewing machine and we'll stitch the Velcro on. And we're pretty much done with the first part of part 1, which is doing the collar without the stand-up collar. So next we're going to be doing part 2, which is the stand-up collar. Right here we've already got to the point where we've got the whole collar cut and pinked the edges. Although I did not sew the top of the collar area together, we're going to go through and kind of treat this one a little bit different, because this one we're actually giving a collar to. And this is the more traditional one that I've seen a lot of people wearing. So now, because this is a side closure collar as opposed to a back or a front, I've made my collar to where the pattern's a little bit different, and you can see over here on the right hand side there's a scoop that goes in the front, and you just want to determine which side's the right side of your collar, which side's the back side. So I'm showing you right here, that's the front side of the collar, and you can see that the collar over here on this side has got the scoop, so that's the front. So what I'll do is I will take the front and I will line up these edges and I will pin them together. And that's quite a bit of bulk, but it's totally doable. And I'll take the back side of the collar and I'll pin those together. And you probably saw I had roughly about 2 to 2.5 inches worth of collar and the bottom part of the ruffle collar in difference. Now what I do when I have to ease my fabric in is I actually bend it over my finger, and you can see me kind of doing that where I'm kind of bending the fabric over the top of my finger and then kind of pinching and stretching a little bit. You just basically want to ease your collar into the bottom part of the collar. And when you're done, we're going to the sewing machine. It's looking good. Okay, so we're going to top stitch right here, and I just keep kind of going back and forth and looking under and making sure that all of these layers of fabric are getting caught up in there properly. Okay, and when you're done, you can leave your collar at that. You're pretty much done. Kind of take a good look. But for me, I always have to go that one extra step just because I'm kind of one of those crazy sewing ladies. So I'm going to go over to my serger and I'm actually going to true up this edge, which will kind of enclose the interfacing, and it just gives it a cleaner, more professional look. And it's not as scratchy around your neck. And to even further everything, I put one of my clothing labels in here, and I'm going to tuck that serging thread underneath, and I'm actually going to top stitch that edge down to the bottom part of the collar. And these are the extra little touches that actually, I think that if you're doing like any kind of costume contest, these are things that judges look for. So that's why I'm kind of showing you guys these little extra steps that'll help your costume look a little bit more professional. Okay, so now we're going to attach the Pom Poms. This part, there's so many different ways you could do this, but what I like to do is I like to take my sewing needle and catch some of the fabric from the very center of these little petals, and I go down through the center of the pom-pom and back up and through the fabric, and I do that 2 or 3 times, and then I go back up through the pom-pom into the fabric and tie a knot. And then after I'm done tying a knot, I put the fabric or the thread back down through the pom-pom and clip my ends. And there you have it. Easy peasy. So here's the no collar and here's a stand-up collar. I hope you guys learned something from this. If not, enjoyed my fabric ramblings again.
Ooh, I like that.
If you guys had any questions about the project or have any comments, definitely leave them down below. Follow me on all other social media, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.